What's going on, guys? Rybomby Teacher in the house, and I am here with my team builder for week 4 of the PUL. Your Royal Bomber for Bombies are taking on the Struggle Bus and Coach Bernie. He's got a bit of an unfortunate record. He's currently 0-3 right now, but he's been improving every week. He's been getting better and better as he gets to grips with his team. His team is extremely difficult to prepare for. He's got a very unusual draft in the sense that he's actually got 3 weathers on his team. Now, 2 of those weathers are pretty obvious, one of them is a little bit more hidden. So let's talk about his team, and then we'll talk about my team afterwards. Just a quick reminder, I mentioned it in my last video, I made another free agency drop. I dropped Dusclops for Girder giving me a fighting type which my team otherwise didn't have. If you like that change, let me know. Also, if you like the change that I've actually got music in the background now, the music's by GlitchX City. Her link is going to be in the description down below. Definitely go check her out if you don't use her music. I use her music all of my streams at the moment. I wanted to put them in my videos as well. Let me know if you like that change or not, or you just want to hear my voice. Feel free to let me know. Right. Team time. So, first up, he has a Suncore in his Mega Charizard Y and Victory Bell. Megazard Y, of course, when it Mega Evolves, gets the Drought ability, has 159 special attack, which is absolutely disgusting. Does get things like Solar Beam as well, which can hit things like my Slowbro, which otherwise has an easy switch into it. Does get things like Toxic as well, which would be interesting to see what he chooses to bring. Victory Bell is probably a Pokemon that doesn't come. It might come because I have Clefable, and Victory Bell is a brilliant answer to it. It's a decent Chlorophyll user, but its base 70 speed really doesn't mean it uses Chlorophyll that well. Like, after a Quiver Dance, Volcarona outspeeds it, so it's not gonna matter too much. It could be a physical set though. It does get some pretty okay tech moves. It gets things like Strength Sap, which can drop my attack and heal for a shed load. If he does bring Victory Bell, that's one thing he gets. The one problem he has with Sun, however, is I have my own Sun Sweeper. I have Volcarona in my team, which is absolutely brutal in Sun. It's considered one of the better Sun Sweepers in Draft League format. So whether he chooses to bring Sun or not, I'm not convinced it comes. He might bring the Charizard, but I don't think he brings Victory Bell for that reason. Next up is his Sand Core with Tyranitar, Excadrill, and Stoutland. Tyranitar, pretty good Sand setter. Some people prefer Hippowdon. I like Tyranitar a little bit more because of the diversity of sets it can run. It can run things like a Dragon Dance set, can be Choice Banded, can be like a bulky Rock setter, can be even a special attacker if you want it to be. It does have a somewhat okay special attack stat. I've actually run special Tyranitar in Sand teams in the past. The one problem Tyranitar has, especially, is that big quad weakness to fighting, and since I brought Girder into my team, I can now patch that weakness up, where I now have a fighting type to hit it with. There's also some decent fighting coverage on my team, things like Focus Blast on my Clefable, a couple of my Mons get Low Kick as well, and things like that. Stoutland is an oddball. He did bring it last week. It's a really decent Sand user because it gets the ability Sand Rush, much like Excadrill does. The issue I find with Stoutland, obviously, is it has 2 other abilities that are just as good. Intimidate can cripple my physical users. Scrappy, of course, allows Choice Banded returns to hit my Sableye. I feel like he's more likely to run Scrappy, but he does sack off the speed and the Sand immunity to be able to hit one Pokemon on my team by doing that. Not sure he does go for that. His more likely Sand Sweeper, if he brings it, of course, is Drill. Excadrill with Sand Rush or Sand Force, both really powerful abilities in Sand. Gets access to moves like Swords Dance and Rapid Spin, as well as Stealth Rock. So it can be a very difficult one to deal with. Excadrill in Sand is one of the only things that outspeeds my Aerodactyl, of course barring Scarfers like Scarf Noivern. But yeah, I think he's more likely to bring a Life Orb Sand Rush set, potentially with Rapid Spin if he accidentally ends up getting rocks on himself, either through one of my Mons setting it up or through my Sableye bouncing his rocks back. Typical main set for Stoutland is, I mentioned it before, he gets things like Banded Return, Superpower, Pursuit. Could also get Facade in case he's worried about entry hazards or being toxic. Next Pokemon on his team is the most difficult mod on his team for me to deal with, and that is Sylveon. If he brings Choice Specs Sylveon with Pixelate Hyper Voice, I don't really have a lot of switch-ins for it on my team in general. Ferrothorn can switch it into it, but it still gets 2-shot. The only thing that really does semi-switch into it is Volcarona. And you never really want Volcarona to be taking free damage, unfortunately. If he brings a Carmine or Cleric Sylveon, it's a little bit more manageable. I can still deal with that, but it's still going to be incredibly difficult. I do expect that Spec Sylveon to come, and I do expect a nightmare of a time trying to deal with it. Noivern, I briefly mentioned passing him before, pretty fast. It's the fastest base speed on his team. Flying Dragon type, pretty okay typing. It's got nice abilities in Frisk and Infiltrator. Frisk if he wants to scout some of my items. Infiltrator if he wants to bypass any potential subs. Particularly substitute on something like my Sableye. Could be a problem. It's an okay special wall breaker, it's got decent special attack stat, however it doesn't really do well against things like my Clefable or my Slowbro. Aero, if he's not Scarf, outspeeds it and outgoes it with a Stone Edge, so I'm not sure if Noivern really comes unless it's Scarfed. It is an okay Z-move user, I've had it in a draft before, I know what it can do, but I don't think it comes this week. A more likely bring though is going to be Sigilif. Sigilif, pretty bulky, decent special attacker, got 3 very, very nice abilities. Most commonly you see it run with Magic Guard to stop it being weak to rocks. The other abilities, Wonder Skin means that status conditioning moves like Toxic or Leech Seed or anything like that are more likely to miss. I believe they make them 50% accurate. And Tinted Lens means like your normally resisted attacks do neutral damage, so it's pretty strong. I feel like if he brings Sigilif, he brings some kind of Life Orb type set with Magic Guard, with things like Air Slash, Heat Wave for Ferrothorn, Energy Ball most likely comes as well for Slowbro. I can see him potentially running a Spec set, or he can run the Flame Orb Psycho Shift set. I would worry with him if he brings Flame Orb Psycho Shift because I have Guts on my Girder, for example, so I don't think he wants to give my Girder a Guts boost. That's something to bear in mind. It's also actually kind of good in Sand. It does have Sand viability, of course, for not taking the Sand damage, but it is quite weak to my Aerodactyl and my Rhyperior, both absolutely decimated, so we'll see if he brings it. I think it's a likely bring. He did bring it last week, and actually played it pretty well, so I'll see if he can bring it. Next on his team is Decidueye. I don't see Decidueye ever coming to any game on his team personally. It's okay against things like Swords Dance and Defog. Its Z-move is actually pretty powerful, it does hit pretty hard, but its Ghost typing making it weak to Pursuit and Sucker Punch. Even things like Crunch from Aerodactyl just absolutely does a lot to him. Has okay Special Bolt with base 100 SPDF, but it's nothing too special. It's really too slow to be a good sweeper, it only has base 70 speed. So I don't see a world where Decidueye comes this match, but if it does come, it's going to be fairly easy to deal with in my opinion, especially when I have things like an Aero and a Volcarona that really do hit it incredibly hard. And I left these 2 last Pokemon for a reason. When I mentioned that he has 3 weathers, probably a lot of you in the team builder are thinking, Rabombi, are you crazy? Where's the rain element? Magneton, believe it or not, gets Rain Dance. So I could see a world where he brings a Magneton with an Eviolite, set up the Rain Dance for Swift Swim Seismitoad. Seismitoad itself, somewhat okay natural bulk, does get access to Stealth Rock and obviously only has 1 weakness to Grass. Also gets access to things like Toxic. If it's not in rain though, it's often forced to be a really defensive set, which is kind of a little passive. It doesn't really do well against my Ferrothorn though, so I don't see a world where he can bring Seismitoad easily, because if I bring Ferrothorn, Seismitoad is always forced out. I also can run things like Energy Ball on my Slowbro or Giga Drain on my Volcarona, for example. It's just a couple of grass type moves that can happen. So I don't necessarily think it comes. Magneton itself might come because of Ferrothorn. Obviously, like Magnezone, it does get Magnet Pull to trap it and potentially OHKO with HP Fire with a Choice Spec set. Obviously, it's a little bit weaker than Magnezone. I don't believe it has the same special attack. It's pretty close, but I'm not quite sure. Obviously, Magneton lacks the bulk as well. Obviously, doesn't survive very well against things like my Rhyperior because Earthquake destroys it. Earthquake from a Joyce Banded Arrow also destroys it, for example. Fighting type moves from things like my Girder also beats it. So, it probably doesn't come this week, but you never know. You never know. These teams are quite hard to prepare for. In terms of hazards or removal, he actually has no spikes, toxic spikes, or sticky webs on his team. His only entry hazards are Stealth Rocks in the form of all of his Sandsetters, basically. Tyranitar, Excadrill, they'll both get it, and Seismitoad also gets it. In terms of removal, he has 4 defoggers in the form of Decidueye, Sigilif, Noivern, and Charizard, and a Rapid Spinner in the form of Excadrill. He does also have Heal Bell on things like Stoutland and Sylveon, should he need a Cleric. So, let's talk about my team. I've got some heat sets this week. I'm really excited to bring these to you. The first of which you could probably already guess on my screen is Mira Mega Sableye. We're running a bit of attack this week, so we're running mostly specially defensive. Max HP 130 EVs in Spadef. This means that I can live a Flamethrower from Charizard Y in Sun, which is really strong. I take about 63 to 78%, so he needs a crit to be able to one-shot me. However, that 126 attack EVs and the Brave Nature means that after Fake Out, Rock Tomb has a chance to knock it out. So, that's one cool tip we got. The Rock Tomb, of course, hits really, really hard on any of his flying types that he has. He does have 3 of them in the form of Zard, Noivern, and Sigilif. So it's worth noting that Rock Tomb is incredibly impactful. Low Kick's there for Tyranitar and Excadrill. Low Kick actually with these attack EVs and the nature actually one-shots Tyranitar on its own. I don't even need Fake Out or anything like that. I can just one-shot it straight up. It takes 2 to kill Excadrill, so that's something to bear in mind. But this has got some pretty cool tech. Knockoff, of course, pretty spammable. The only thing that I can't knock off are, of course, Zard's Megastone and any particular Z moves. But yeah, I'm really excited for this set. I'm most likely going to lead with this set. The only time I probably wouldn't necessarily lead it is if he brings Sylveon, because Sylveon is the easy switch into this thing, so I do need to be careful around Sylveon. Now, where would my Mega be without its partner in crime? Clefable Moonshine is next. Running a mixed defensive set this week. This is more to allow for it to take little hits from some of the special moves. Things like Hyper Voice from Sylveon, any sort of special move from Noivern and Sigilif. It does take 1 hit guaranteed from Zard. Doesn't really hit back super hard. Stealth Rock, of course, there. This is actually almost the exact same set of last week. Moonblast for General Stab. Flamethrower for things like Excadrill. Also to catch the Victory Bell on the switch in, as Victory Bell does one-shot any spread of Clefable with Sludge Bomb. Worth noting, Flamethrower in Sun actually hits incredibly hard on this set. Wish, of course, for utility, and Stealth Rock for entry hazards if I don't bounce them back. Next up, now I actually changed this set. I was going to bring even more heat than this. We're bringing Slowbro, of course, Dopey, running Rocky Helmet again. Rocky Helmet mostly for drill, of course. Getting that little bit of extra chip always helps. We are running Grass Knot though. Grass Knot's there mostly for Seismitoad, if he chooses to bring it, as Seismitoad's pretty easy switch into Slowbro. Slowbro doesn't really hit all that hard. We're running Trick Room, of course, as always. There is a Pokemon on my team that really loves Trick Room. Scald is there, of course, for things like the Drill and the Tyranitar. It also hits the Charizard relatively okay out of Sun, not really that well in Sun. Ice Beam, of course, there for things like the Noivern, the Decidueye maybe if it comes, things like the Sigilif. They don't really appreciate the Ice Beam. Obviously, of course, running Regenerator to regain health. Next up, making second week in a row for me, is going to be Jalapeno, the Volcarona. Running a Life Orb Quiver set this week. This changed because originally I had Rain Dance on my Slowbro, but I took Rain Dance off over for Energy Ball. This originally had Hurricane over Bug Buzz. Now I like Hurricane on Volcarona, obviously for things like the Victory Bell and the Decidueye, but it doesn't really hit a lot of the rest of his team that well. So I decided to opt for Bug Buzz as well to hit a lot of his team more for stab damage. Obviously the Life Orb buffs it. After a Quiver Dance, I outspeed everything except an Excadrill and Sand, or a potential Scarf Noivern. But after that, pretty much any of these hits hit way too hard for his team to switch into. If I can get set up out of Trick Room, this thing just sweeps his whole team. He doesn't really have a lot of switch-ins to any of this. Giga Drain, of course, for Seismitoad. Fiery Dance hits Victory Bell. Fiery Dance in Sun, of course, is extremely powerful and does give me a 50% chance to further buff my special attack, which makes it a very potent move for sweeping. Next up is going to be my Trick Room Abuser this week. We've brought him in straight off the bench, straight into my team. It's Bob the Builder here with the Girder. Rocking the Violet. We're actually running Sheer Force this week. There is a good reason for that. I'll talk about that. Drain Punch, Fire Punch, Stone Edge, Poison Jab, Max HP, Max Attack. Brave Nature again for Trick Room benefits. We're running Sheer Force this week because I don't see too many worlds where he can get reliable Toxics off. I may change this back to Guts if I think a lot of his mons are going to run Toxic. I don't know, because he's played quite an offensive playstyle against his 3 previous opponents. I don't see him running Toxic too much. If he does, of course, run Toxic, then I will obviously consider running Guts instead. But just in case he doesn't, Poison Jab actually one-shots the Sylveon if it's not max defense. It 2-shots Sylveon if it is. It can potentially one-shot if it's a Specs in Trick Room, of course. Drain Punch for General Stab also hits the Tyranitar and the Drill and the Stoutland. Fire Punch is there for Victory Bell and Decidueye. And Stone Edge is of course there for Charizard, mostly. And of course for Noivern. The set's pretty good. Again, I'm not convinced if I want to run Sheer Force or Guts. I will make that decision a little bit closer to the battle. I'm actually recording this pretty early in the week, so we will see what happens. Last but by no means least is my potential lead if Sylveon comes, and that's Big Boy Pteranodon, making week 2, making it second week in a row since I just added it to my team. Running Choice Band and Pressure, of course, Earthquake, Stone Edge, Iron Head, and Crunch. Earthquake and Stone Edge, between the two of them, hit his entire team. Like, he doesn't really have many switch-ins to either of those two moves. Iron Head, of course, is there for Sylveon, Crunch is mostly there for Decidueye, but this just hits so hard, and because it's 130 base speed, it forces Scarfers to be able to actually outspeed me. Alright, so Monza didn't make it this week. Ferrothorn very nearly made the team. Ferrothorn's big problem is Sun, of course, and fire coverage. He has quite a fair bit of fire coverage on his team outside of the Charizard as well. Well, Ferrothorn does potentially beat things like the Tyranitar, it can beat Seismitoad 1v1. Its matchup is kind of bad against the rest of his team. So I like Ferrothorn, but I just couldn't bring it this week. Dragalge actually almost made it to the team as my Sylveon response, but aside from beating Sylveon and potentially the Decidueye, and not really the Victory Bell, but it can, it doesn't really beat that much of his team, and it's kind of too slow and reliant on Trick Room to be super good in this match. Rhyperior was actually on my team. I dropped Rhyperior for Aerodactyl. Rhyperior relies on Trick Room to be strong in this match, and I often don't run 2 Trick Room Abusers on the same team. I tend to run Trick Room User, Trick Room Abuser, basically, in the way that I run this team. I might switch Garda for Rhyperior, but I'm not 100% sure on that yet. but I don't think I will. I think I'll leave this as it is now. I've been chopping and changing for a little bit. A lot of Raichu doesn't really do a lot in sand, unfortunately. Obviously, it does get things like Focus Blast for Tyranitar, but because of the special defense buff you get in sand, it doesn't actually do that much. It's not particularly strong. Swellow is very weak in sand. It's obviously very weak to rocks, and most ground-type moves, or most ground-type Pokemon carry rock coverage. I didn't really like Swellow's matchup, despite the fact it's got a very good speed tier. It's actually faster than his whole team. I think that's all of them, right? Yep, that's all of them. Right. Thank you so much for watching my team builder. Let me know if you enjoyed the music down below, and I will see you guys in the battle. Take care now.